In this video, we'll go over the best token generators in Yu-Gi-Oh! Which are currently not banned, as there's like 4 really good token generators that are banned for being too good at generating tokens. And at number 10, we have Cosmic Compass. This card has the effect, when it's normal summoned, to allow you to special summon a number of tokens up to the number of monsters your opponent controls. So if your opponent has a full board of monsters, this card can generate 4 tokens for you, which is not a half bad use of your normal summon, especially since tokens are incredibly useful with the new link summoning mechanic, where before link summoning, tokens were not very useful for extra deck summoning outside of synchro decks. But since a lot of link monsters can just use tokens as its full materials, tokens got a huge boost to their viability, so a lot of these cards are a lot better now. And the 4 cards on the ban list that generate tokens were not banned before link monsters came out. Now, since Cosmic Compass requires your normal summon, and it requires your opponent to have monsters on their side of the field already, it's not the best of the bunch on this list, but it is still a really good token generator nonetheless. Which is why it makes it the number 10 spot, as it has seen competitive play in at least one deck. And at number 9, we have Pacifis, the Phantasm City. This is a field spell card which generates a token every time your opponent activates a card effect, just as long as you do not control a token already. And the token this card generates is level 8, has 2000 attack and defense, and is a worm water monster. And since the field spell card's ability to generate tokens is not once per turn, if you have ways to get rid of the token on your side of the field during your opponent's turn, you can keep summoning new tokens with this card's effect, where even if they do manage to destroy your tokens, you'll just get another one the next time your opponent does anything. And this card also has another effect that when exactly 1 normal monster is summoned to your side of the field, you can add a Phantasm Spiral card from your deck to your hand. And tokens do count as normal monsters, so this card can allow you to search off of summoning that token. And the Phantasm Spiral trap cards are actually super good, as they can activate themselves from your hand as long as you control a face-up Umi field spell card. And would you know it, Pacifist the Phantasm City counts its name as Umi. But the trap cards also require you to only control normal monsters, which is what limits their good effects, as one of them is just the ability to destroy any one of your opponent's cards, and the other one allows you to negate monster effects and reduce that monster's attack and defense by 1000, as well as both of them having secondary effects that interact with the equip spell cards, which are rarely used outside of pure Phantasm Spiral decks. Basically, Pacifist allows you to gain a whole bunch of advantage on its own, while also generating pretty beefy tokens. But it doesn't play well with link summoning, as it's kind of restricted to only having normal monsters, so it's only really useful with normal-centric decks, of which there aren't very many, besides pure Phantasm Spiral decks, which is why this really good field spell card only makes it the number 9 on this list. And at number 8, we have Mecha Phantom Beast Dracossack. This is a generic rank 7 monster, which has the effect to detach one of its materials in order to special summon 2 tokens. It also has the effect where this card cannot be destroyed by battle or card effects as long as you control a token, and it has another effect where once per turn you contribute a Mecha Phantom Beast monster to destroy 1 card on the field, which its tokens count as Mecha Phantom Beast monsters. But if you do that, this card cannot attack during the turn. Now, this card was a staple addition to pretty much any deck that went into level 7 monsters, and still occasionally sees play to this day in decks that can go into level 7 monsters, because its ability to generate advantage while also destroying your opponent's cards is pretty good, even if you just want to turn 2 level 7 monsters into 3 monsters on the field. You're always good to go +1 off this card's effect. You can also just bring out the tokens in order to leave this card on the field as a hard to take out boss monster, as your opponent will have to destroy the tokens first before getting over this card. Although generally it's used for its other uses besides its walling capabilities, but the fact that that's also an option is what gives this card the versatility to see competitive play. And at number 7, we have Blackwing, Steam the Cloak. This card is currently banned in the OCG, and currently sees very little play in the TCG, and that's only because the TCG doesn't have needle fiber yet. I can assure you, this card will see much more played once that card is live. Because what this card does is, if this card leaves the field, you can special summon a token, and this effect is not once per turn. It also has a once per duel effect, where you contribute a monster to special summon this card from the graveyard. So if this card is brought out directly from the deck with Needle Fiber, and then it's sent to the graveyard for a Link Summon, you can get a token on the field, but you can then tribute to bring this card back, and then use it for another Link Summon, which will then leave you with another token on the field. And if used in this way, this one card allows you to go +2 in card economy based on the amount of tokens that were summoned, especially since some Link monsters specifically require effect monsters as the materials. You could just tribute one of your tokens to bring this card out, be used as that Link material, and then when it goes away, you'll be left with another token anyway. Although you can only do that one time per duel. It's still a super good effect though, that's definitely worth that once per duel restriction. And if you just have other ways to bring this card out and remove it from the field and put it back, you can theoretically generate an infinite amount of tokens with it, which is probably why this card is banned in the OCG, but the next 6 spots see more competitive play in the TCG, which is why they're all at higher spots. And at number 6, we have Ojama Trio. This card has the ability to special summon 3 tokens for your opponent, who have the negative effects, where they can't be used as tributes for tribute summons, and each time one of them is destroyed, your opponent takes 300 points of damage. And this card has been on and off the ban list for years, because these tokens all have 0 attack. So if you're able to swap them into attack position, that would give your opponent 3 0 attack monsters on their side of the field, which allows for so many different decks to OTK your opponent. Although once Link monsters came out, this was no longer a big concern, as players could just link these 3 monsters away with their extra deck plays, where giving your opponent 3 tokens was no longer a viable strategy. As Ojama Trio is pretty heavily played in Mystic Mine decks, as what Mystic Mine does is, if your opponent controls more monsters than you do, your opponent cannot activate monster effects or attack. But it also has the other side of it, where if you control more monsters than your opponent, you can't use monster effects or attack. So locking your opponent out of all monster effects and being able to attack is incredibly good, because most decks are very monster effect heavy anyway, as this card also stops hand traps from working, as they are technically monster effects as well, even if they activate in the hand and graveyard. But Mystic Mine has a negative effect, where during the end phase, if both players control the same number of monsters, this card destroys itself. And it does count 0 monsters on both sides of the field as controlling the same amount of monsters. You can't just activate this card and then have no monsters on your side of the field in order to lock your opponent out of doing anything, as the card will just destroy itself before your opponent's turn even starts. That's why Mystic Mine decks love cards that give themselves to their opponent, like DD Guide or Ojama Trio, which gives your opponent 3 monsters. Now, your opponent can just link the monsters away, but they can't activate any of their link monster effects, so it's almost impossible for them to get rid of all of their cards if you give them 3 with Ojama Trio, unless they use a spell or trap card to destroy their own monsters. So as long as you just never summon a monster on your side of the field, your opponent will be permanently locked out of attacking or using monster effects. Which is why Mystic Mine strategies are actually a competitive deck, because it works so well against pretty much all meta decks. And Ojama Trio allows you to give your opponent 3 tokens, while being searchable by Lilith and Trap Trick. And at number 5, we have Mare Mare. This is one of the few cards in the game that has an effect that can only be used 3 times per turn, where this card has the effect where you can reduce the level of this card by 1 in order to special summon a level 1 token with the same attribute and type as this card, only with much weaker attack. And since this card is level 7, you can use this effect a total of 6 times before you can't use it anymore. But usually people only use the first 3 times, and then rarely does this card survive to the next turn in order to use its effect again. Now, since this card can summon 3 tokens pretty quickly, it has a restriction on it where it cannot be special summoned, except if it's by the effect of a worm-type monster. And seeing as this card is a tuner, you can just use its tokens in order to go into easy synchro summons as well. So, it's a really good card that sees play in decks which can go into level 7 synchros, as there's a level 7 synchro monster called Yazi, Evil of the Yang Xing, which requires generic materials, and it has the effect where, when this card is destroyed, you can special summon any worm-type monster from your deck. And it also has another effect where it can target a Yang Xing monster you control, and any one card your opponent controls, in order to destroy both of those targets. So, if you simply target itself with this effect, it will proc its own floating effect to bring out Mare Mare from the deck, who can then bring out 3 tokens and give you 4 monsters in the field for link plays, including 1 tuner monster, which is much more valuable than a normal monster. So, being able to go into level 7 synchro monsters allows you to go +4 in card economy, as Yazi destroys one of your opponent's cards as well, brings out a monster to replace itself, who can then bring out 3 other monsters. And that's why Mare Mare occasionally sees competitive play, with the only downside to it is that you don't ever really want to draw the card, as Yazi can only special summon it from the deck, so it is a garnet. And at number 4, we have Mecha Phantom Beast O-Lion. This card has the effect that when it's sent to the graveyard, you can special summon a Mecha Phantom Beast token. And since this is a level 2 machine type tuner, it's an excellent target to be pulled out of the deck with Needle Fiber, as it shares the same type as Needle Fiber, with both of them being machine type monsters. And since there's a couple of link monsters that require monsters to be of the same type, this card gives Needle Fiber plays a little bit more power, as it will also give you a token for going into link monsters. Although in the TCG, where Needle Fiber isn't released yet, this card also just sees competitive play in Block Dragon decks, Scraps, and Spirals, strangely enough. And that's because this card summons a token no matter how it's sent to the graveyard. So it can activate from being sent directly from the deck to the graveyard, which is why it's on a higher spot than Blackwing Steam the Cloak, who won't really become super useful until Needle Fiber is released, because O-Lion is already useful before that card is even in the TCG, as being able to summon a token while milling your deck is pretty good. And at number 3, we have Phantom Skyblaster. This card has the effect where when it's normal summoned, you can special summon a number of Skyblaster tokens up to the number of monsters you control. So, if you control 1 monster in your link zone, and then 1 other monster on the field, this card will allow you to fill the rest of your board with tokens, giving you 4 monsters with 1 normal summon, as it does count itself as the number of monsters you control for its effect. And because this one is a lot more easier to control than something like Cosmic Compass, its ability to bring out 3 other monsters with your normal summon made this card really good in link decks, to the point where he got limited in the ban list for being a little bit too good of a use of your normal summon. Although, since you did need to use your normal summon in order to get all those tokens, it wasn't useful in every deck, but the decks that could make use of its effect got a +3 in card advantage, which is always incredibly useful, especially since you don't need to special summon it from the deck, like Mare Mare, in order to get that kind of advantage. And at number 2, we have Sky Striker Mecha, Hornet Drones. This is a quick play spell card, which only has the effect to special summon 1 token, and only if you control no monsters in your main monster zones. Now, this card doesn't seem like that useful of an effect, as there's a lot of other cards that special summon more tokens, which are also associated to spell cards, but what makes this card so much better than all those others is the amount of support that Sky Strikers have, as there's a Sky Striker Link monster called Sky Striker Kagari, which only requires 1 non-fire Sky Striker monster as its materials, which the tokens count as, and Kagari's effect is to add a Sky Striker spell card from your graveyard to your hand. So if you use Hornet Drones to bring out Kagari, and then use Kagari's effect to add Hornet Drones back to your hand, you can then just use Hornet Drones again to bring out another token. And then you'll have 2 monsters in the field without using any normal summon, and without restricting your other summons in any way, which is such a good starting play in pretty much any deck that both Hornet Drones and Kagari got hit on the ban list, with only Kagari coming off recently. Especially since Hornet Drones could be easily searched out through Sky Striker Mobilize Engage, which just lets you add any Sky Striker card from your deck to your hand, and also, if you had 3 or more spell cards in your graveyard, you got to draw 1 card. So if you used Engage with 3 or more spells in your grave, Engage becomes a +1, while also searching out the really good Hornet Drones card. So the dream starting combo with this engine was having 3 spells in your grave, using Engage to search out Hornet Drones, and then you'd end with +2 in card advantage without using your normal summon, and without locking you out of doing anything else for the rest of the turn. So it was just a really good engine for pretty much any deck, which is why they restricted the cards involved in the combo. Hornet Drones is currently limited to 1, and they recently banned Engage. And at number 1, we have Scapegoat, a card which has been on and off the ban list ever since it came out because of its ability to generate tokens so easily. This is a quick play spell card, which has the effect to special summon 4 sheep tokens, each one with 0 attack and defense, and they can't be used as tributes for a tribute summon. And this card also locks you out of summoning any other monsters during the turn you use it. And even with all of these restrictions, people always found ways to abuse this card, because it's a +3 in card advantage, as it's a 1 card that gives you 4 monsters on the field, and was a crucial component of Goat control decks, back in the Goat control format, where players would tribute one of the Scapegoat tokens with Metamorphosis in order to bring out Thousand Eyes Restrict. Once Metamorphosis got banned and Scapegoat limited, it would just occasionally see play meta decks here and there, to when it eventually got unlimited as it wasn't very useful in the Pendulum or Exceeds era. And then, once Link monsters came out, and Scapegoat became a very heavily played staple card, because it was essentially a 1-card Link 4 monster, as long as you activated this card during your opponent's turn, preferably during their end phase, you could bypass the restrictions of this card and have 4 monsters on your side of the field, whose drawbacks don't apply to Link monsters in the slightest. Sure, these cards can't be tributed for a tribute summon, but they can be used as Link materials no problem. This card gave the same amount of advantage as Phantom Skyblaster and Mare Mare, without any of the setup required of those 2 cards, and in fact was pretty much effortless, which is why it's currently limited, but not banned, because at least you can't use this on your first turn if you want to go into Link plays. It is slow enough where you have to wait a turn before you can use it, which is why it's only limited to 1 copy, and easily the best token generating card that's not banned. Alright, and that's the end of the list. If you think there's any other token generating cards that I may have missed, I'd love to hear about them down in the comments. And did you know, only 27% of people who watch these videos are subscribed to the channel? So, if you enjoy these videos, you should probably subscribe to be notified when a new one comes out, as there is at least one new top 10 every week.